Thank you so much for joining us today on Connect and Collaborate, where we come together each day to introduce you to our network of business and community leaders and to discuss important issues that impact business in Colorado and the region. I'm Tammy Schaefer, your on-air producer, and today we are connecting once again with Anthony Lambatos, owner of Footers Catering. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Tammy. How are you?
Very good. Yeah, I'm great.
Good.
I just got back from same as you. We spent a little time where it's sunny and warm.
Tough to come back to the cold weather.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Feeling pretty good, though. So it's great to have you here, Anthony.
Always love coming in.
So tell us a little bit of what's going on with Footers. You always have such great updates for us.
Oh, it's a fun place to be, that's for sure. So yeah, you mentioned sunny weather. We implemented this thing. We actually stole it from New Belgium.
Okay.
New Belgium, if you work there for 5 years, you get a trip to Belgium. And we thought that was a really cool thing. And we said, well, we should do something for people that work at Footers for 5 years. And so anyone who works on our management team gets an anniversary trip every 5 years. They work for us.
Wow.
So we've gone places like, Alaska on a cruise that was sponsored by Food and Wine Magazine, and we've done the Caribbean Food and Wine Festival. So we recently just got back from the Cayman Cookout in the Cayman Islands.
Wow.
And it was hosted by Eric Repair, who's a phenomenal 3 Michelin star chef. But we got to meet Anthony Bourdain, who was there, and Emeril Lagasse, and Robert Irvine, and a lot of really cool chefs that it was awesome for us to be able to do that, but then also Colbert, who has been with Footers for over 10 years, to celebrate that milestone with her and her husband was an awesome experience. So yes, no, don't feel sorry for me. Yeah.
No, we don't. We don't feel bad. That sounds like a great opportunity, and I love that the trip and the reward is still food related.
Yeah, always food focused. Yes.
Awesome. That's great. So that's for your 10-year anniversary employees. That's such a great incentive. What else are you coming up with?
Yeah, start of the year is always a good time for us. December is a busy time. We get a little bit of a break right around the holidays, and then this time in January we really get to kick off our year. But before we do that, we have our annual celebration of 2017. So we recently had our Core Value Awards, where we get together and give an award for each of our 9 core values to one of our employees. And it's a really fun brunch atmosphere that we do, and it's capped off by the viewing of our year in review video. And this year it was 30 minutes long. It's quite the production that goes into capturing it. But it was designed out of a few years ago of us kind of moving so fast, we were forgetting what we were accomplishing and forgetting to recognize everything we were able to do. And so it's a really fun experience that we now start. We'll probably start in a couple months working on the 2018 one to just document everything that's happening throughout the year and everything that we're able to accomplish. So.
Sometimes there's a negative emphasis put on looking back, but sometimes looking back shows you what you've accomplished, what you've been through.
It's incredible. There's things that you're like, oh yeah, we did that this year.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that happened. And now we've got the history of 4 or 5 years of these videos that is really awesome. So.
Oh, that's incredible. I love how you really look at what your team is doing, what you're accomplishing, and giving your teams the kudos for the work they do.
They deserve it. They work their tails off, so.
They sure do. Yeah, we keep saying that catering can't be an easy business, but you make it look easy, and it tastes great.
We have fun doing it.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about your guest for today.
We've got a phenomenal guest today. One of my friends that I've gotten to know over the, we've probably known each other for close to 10 years. But Dave Johnson is the managing partner of C-Squared Solutions, and he is one of the smartest and most intelligent individuals that I know. He has an incredible array of experience, not only from an educational standpoint, but an actual working with businesses and in businesses. I've been very fortunate to collaborate with Dave over a number of years and learned so much from him. So I'm excited to have you here. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Anthony, for inviting me. I think this will be interesting, sharing some stories.
Yes.
Looking forward to it.
Exactly. So yeah, let's jump right in. Dave, you're the managing partner of C-Squared Solutions, and the thing that I think is so cool is you're able to come in and make an impact on the businesses that you help. I'm curious what the most common mistakes you see leadership teams make and business owners, from the operations standpoint.
What we find quite often is that the owner or CEO has not adequately made sure that all employees understand the why of the business and why it exists and how it serves their customers. As a result of that, you don't get the engagement of all the employees in a way that you should, because some people don't know what they're working for besides the paycheck. And to be able to put the why, this is why our business has these customers, this is what we do for them, and be able to have all employees relate to what their contribution is to that, and understand, well, gosh, I do make a difference for that customer. And that where it goes a long way towards motivating people. And we find a lot of business owners don't think of that. They know in their own mind, but they don't think about making sure that their entire team understands that. As a result, you just have different levels of engagement. You have different levels of customer support. And all businesses need to make the customer service number one and make sure that all people understand that that is their number one responsibility.
I love that. Simon Sinek kind of popularized the start with why. But the epiphany for me at Footers, I remember I was at an event and it was so hot, and we had this we call him our hospitality heroes. He was one of our servers, and he's run around. And he comes back and he says, "Man, these people they just won't stop drinking the water. All I'm doing is filling water glasses all night." And it dawned on me at that time that we had not done a good job of talking about the why, because he thought his job was to fill water glasses, and instead of taking that step back and realizing that his job was to create an exceptional experience for the clients and their guests. And by filling water glasses, he was serving that need of making sure they had a good time. And so it was a real light-on moment for me of everybody from your top management down to our servers need to understand what we're doing and why. So talk to us about how businesses can avoid that. What do they have to do to communicate that why in a way that people understand?
Well, I think what happens with many businesses who are successful at this, they link their external messaging to their internal messaging. And so the messaging that they're using in their marketing and in their advertising and so forth has to resonate with people internally, and they have to believe in it as well. We have a client that has done a very good job of that, and very good communication process with their roughly 140 employees. And what happens with it is that their mission statement is believed by everyone in the firm. And it is part of their onboarding process with new employees coming in that they understand why that mission statement, why that's important, and why the company chose that business to be in. And then what they do is they explain to them, and this is especially important with millennials, they explain to them, here's what your contribution is to that mission statement. And here are your key performance indicators that you will be judged on. And they need to be able to see that thread. And this particular company does that very well. And so you've got 140 people in the company that have an ownership mentality that believes that it's their responsibility that customer thinks they're the greatest thing. And you don't see that often in companies, but companies who do that are head and shoulders above their competitors and tend to be the ones that have the best sustainability.
There's two things that I love that you're saying there with tying the key indicators to the mission. I mean, that's a little bit of nuance there, and too many times we think about are we making money or are we not, and that's a main key indicator. But really tying that back to, okay, here's why this number matters, and here's how it relates to the business, I think is tough to do.
What we do and recommend that as they're doing their management review meeting each month, that they continue to ask themselves, why did we make money this month? What did we do that was of value to the customer? and continue to look at that, much like you talked about looking back for your video and what did we do. People forget that. But what happens with that as well, and with another company, we actually, because they're in outsourced IT services, if you're doing your job very well, you're out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying, well, how do their customers continually see our value if everything is working? And so we recommended that they do a newsletter, and do the newsletter monthly of here's what's new and here's what we're doing for you. And that has really helped them with their customer contact. The customer will say, oh, you did this last month. Did you do that for us? Do we need to do that? And it starts that dialogue.
Mm-hmm. And understanding that service they provide. Because,
Yeah.
that's always tough in a business where if there's no pain, do you understand that value?
Right.
You get too good at what you're doing.
Yeah.
The other thing, Dave, I love that you talked about is the frequency.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a thing I learned years ago was, it's not enough just to say it once. We
Mm-hmm.
can't just come out and say, here's our mission. All right, now go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that has to be reinforced all the time. And something that's been very successful for us at Footers of we have to talk about that daily of our mission and identifying things that happened within the company that either embodied our mission and values or that didn't. Were they violated in some way, and calling that out and shining a light on it.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we do in C Squared is we have a weekly team meeting. And I would say probably at any given week, 50% of the people are in the room. The other 50% are on the phone because they're at a client site in another state. And the reason we do that is because we need to continue to keep that cohesion of it as a team. When you look at the members of our team, they've all run businesses and they're self-sufficient. But they're part of our team because they like the camaraderie and they like to be able to collaborate. And so we operate as a shared intellectual property pool. While having that meeting every week, while there may not be something that's really burning on the agenda, there is that process of keeping in touch and sharing ideas. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very important to maintain team cohesion.
Yeah, especially in your business because you have a lot of people that are working on different projects on their own, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that leads me to the work that you do at C Squared and helping so many companies. Talk to us about some of the favorite projects, the favorite types of projects that you get to work on and how you help those companies.
Yeah, we've had some projects that live in infamy, if you will, in that we really had a tremendous impact in the company. And we've had some that live in infamy because it didn't go so well. But our favorite projects are the ones where the management team allows us to come in and be part of their management team on a fractional basis, and we get very much involved with the business. We tell our clients that we focus on two things, process and people, and those two cannot be separated. Whether you're a manufacturing business in Texas or whether you're an advertising firm in Chicago or whether you're a software firm here in Colorado, every firm has intellectual property that wears shoes, and it needs to be nurtured.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we give a company a proposal, it focuses on those things, and we say in the phases, this is what we'll be doing, and this is when we're leaving. Because once we have mentored your people, we need to get out of the way so they can run with it. And those are the companies that we really enjoy the best, where we have that interaction. And we've had a company that had hired us to help them prepare to sell the business, so the co-owners could exit. And going through that process and going through what they needed to do to prepare their best face for an investment banker to take them to market, there was a number of aha moments that they realized. As it turned out, the business sale went a little bit differently. One of the co-owners decided to stay. He got reinvigorated in what they do. The other person said, I do need to leave for health reasons. We wound up putting them in touch with an investment banker that does employee buyouts. And so now the co-owner is still there as the CEO, but the employees own 80% of the business.
Oh, cool.
And that was one of the fun ones to work on. And so what happens with it is quite often you'll start with a strategy and wind up making a 45-degree turn to starboard when you get down and find out what's really driving the business.
That's what's so unique about, I think, what you do at C Squared is it's not just come in for a couple weeks or a day and here's what you need to do, and you've got now this, we're all excited, and 2 days later or 2 weeks later, everybody's put that on the back burner and gone back to what they're doing. With you guys really getting involved with their businesses and, working alongside some of the people, I think makes a huge difference and allows for, I equate it to a plane that's taking off. It just doesn't go straight up. You got to have that runway where you're working alongside them before it can take off. And then I love what you said about we get out of the way and let them do it. You really teach them how to do it, and it makes that lasting change that makes a difference in a lot of these companies.
Yeah. About 60% of our client engagements are fractional CFO. But what's different about our team going in as that fractional CFO is the breadth of operational experience they also have. And so they will start educating the employees that these financial statements that you see are a result of events happening. So let's focus on those events that are happening, and then we can look at the financial statements and what that really means. And then coming out of that, there will be a number of dashboard reports that get designed specific for certain departments and what they need to know and track. And so the key thing is for them to fully understand what are the drivers of their business and then focus on those.
Yep.
And then tie those into the key performance indicators so that you do have that thread running through that I mentioned.
So we've talked a little bit about the operation, but taking that step back in terms of the planning, because I know that's something that you help a lot of companies with. What is it that business owners should be thinking about in leadership teams when they're looking at their strategic planning?
I think the number one question there is you have to ask yourself, whom do we serve? And why are they our customers? But also open up the thinking a little bit to say, who else might we serve and what might they need, so you can look at, can we expand our business, and are there new areas for us to go into so that we are not becoming stale or being pushed into a real tight niche in the market. And so whom do we serve and how do we serve them, I think, is the first thing you need to start with, and looking at that and have that as a core of the process that you're looking at. Because in strategic planning, you're looking two ways. You're looking out at the markets and what's possible, but you're also looking inward and saying, what are we capable of and what can we sustain?
And so, I know there's a lot of buzz about it, and a lot of people start their strategic planning early, but how often should companies be thinking about this? Is it, do you prescribe to do it once a year and you got the plan, or do you have a model that focuses more on continuous process?
Yeah. We recommend strategic planning as a once-a-year viewpoint. And in that, you're going to revisit that periodically. We recommend quarterly because you can have an event in a month that it's kind of a standalone event, and really longer term is not going to affect your strategic plan. Over the course of a quarter, you may see a trend saying, do we have to tweak our strategic plan here? But to be able to go back and examine that. Do you start all over with throwing out your strategic plan and doing a new one each year? No. It should be an evolutionary process. Now, if you're unfortunate enough to be in an industry that's having major disruption, instead of an evolution, you may have a revolution, and you have to address that. But I would say for the vast majority of business, they don't encounter that. It is an evolutionary process.
And I like that because it forces you, sometimes I worry the companies that want to do it too frequently aren't making significant progress or aren't stretching themselves enough to really think about what's possible. And so when you have that mindset that this is not, even a 1-year target, we're really looking at 5-year target, but what do we need to do this year to move ourselves closer to that? I think it makes a lot of sense and gives companies an opportunity to do some awesome things as opposed to just, milling in this, we've done it the same way before and we're going to continue to do it.
Yeah. We have a former client that they're a software company, and their software was sold in a package and it was installed on a server, and they realized everything happening around them where the world is going to the cloud.
Right.
And their competitors are going to the cloud. And so they were trying to figure out how they could make that transition, or even if they should make that transition. And in order to do that, was going to be able to they're going to have a plan that's going to have to make that transition, because your client base needs to understand why they should make that transition.
Right.
And in this particular case, their clients were large companies, and large companies hate change. And so as a result, they had to start a marketing program a year in advance of really wanting to start moving it. The other thing that they had to do technically was to redesign the architecture of their software so it could be offered in the cloud rather than on a dedicated server. They figured out that it was going to take them 18 to 20 months to be able to make all that technical change. But we had advised them that you need to be able to plan in two areas: marketing, on how you're going to message that so that the client's willing to make that change, and financially, where you're going to go from these big chunks of revenue coming in to going to a monthly subscription, and how you're going to manage that and how you're going to budget for that, because suddenly you're going to be cash short if all of your customer base moves over. And so we were doing all that forward planning. And they were so successful at it that they've been acquired.
Wow.
And they're part of a larger firm now, but that management team is still there. And that company is run pretty much as a standalone division. And but they have the luxury now being part of a bigger company with other software products. And so they're more of an end-to-end solution to the clients in their market, which is why they were acquired by the larger company.
That's such a cool story of a company really having the foresight to see this is what we need to do, and putting that timeline in place of what needs to happen. I mean, thinking 18 to 24 months out is a difficult thing to do, but that whole intention about that and how you helped them with that, is probably largely what made them successful and eventually led to them being acquired.
We like to think that we had a positive impact, yes.
I think you have a positive impact on a lot of companies. What are, tell some of our listeners, what are the types of projects that you work on at C Squared and what you do for some of your clients?
We have done everything from helping people pick new computer systems and software and then doing the project management to install it, to coming in and cleaning up their accounting and their books so they can actually figure out what's going on, and then being there for extended period of time to mentor. One of the things that is different about our team is that they really enjoy mentoring. And so as a result of that, they spend a lot of their time working with staff with the thought of, we're going to get you guys so good in your operations that you won't need us. And then we can then move on to the next client. And so it's everything from fixing to planning to, in some cases, going in and just getting people to work together better and getting them to communicate. And even in that situation, we start with the why, the reason to communicate and what to communicate.
And size of companies you like to work with? I know it's a wide range.
It is. It's everything from a company that's $2 million in revenue on up to a publicly traded oil and gas company in Texas. We really like the smaller companies better because you can have the impact and you can have the personal relationship.
It's like you said, that when you got the big ship, it's harder to turn that ship around and make those significant changes. Where you got the smaller company and they can be a little bit more nimble.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, and Dave Johnson, it sounds like in a lot of cases you are intentionally working yourselves out of a job, right? You go in there and you want to make the changes, help them make the changes that are going to improve their company so that they don't need you anymore.
Yeah, they don't need to be signing a blank PO.
Okay.
It's a situation where we have to earn our value every day.
Of course.
And that supports that relationship. Even though it may become friends and personal, you still have to earn your value every day.
And then they'll seek you out the next time they need that kind of effort again. We are talking with Dave Johnson, managing partner of C Squared Solutions, along with Anthony Lambatos, owner of Footers Catering. We're going to be back with more right after this break. Stay with us. Thanks so much for staying with us today here on Connect and Collaborate. We're connecting with Anthony Lambatos, owner of Footer's Catering. Anthony, it's great to have you here. You always have such great perspectives to share with us on business, and so many great partners you're working with, like Dave Johnson.
Oh yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I love it. It's fun, and I learned so much getting to bring, the people I know in and just have these conversations that you don't always get to have.
Exactly.
When you're hanging out or meeting at an event, and so I really enjoy it. Thank you.
Yes. Dave Johnson, Managing Partner with C Squared Solutions. We're happy to have you along with us today.
Thank you. I think this is an interesting way to share ideas.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I know, Anthony, you have more questions for Dave.
Yeah, so most of the segments that we do in the shows, I always try to bring in that aspect of creating a great place to work. It was something that was central to April and I when we purchased the business from my dad, and we've tried to be very intentional about that. So I love talking about what companies are doing and how do you really create that great place to work. So Dave, you get a chance to see the good, the bad, the ugly. From your standpoint, what do you think it takes to create a great place to work?
Surprisingly, a number of people do not have a good idea of what they want to be. And that the culture in their organization has occurred and it was not planned.
And you're talking business owners don't have an idea of what they want to be.
Or it could be the entire management team.
Yeah, right.
From that standpoint. But what happens with it is that to be a great place to work, it has to be intentional. It has to be one of your major goals and something that is shared across your entire management team, so everybody is walking the talk. And so defining what you want to be and being able to communicate that is where you have to start. And you look at a number of companies around Colorado that are always on the list of best places to work. And it is an intentional goal and process that they have in each one of those companies. And it's something that they're very proud of, that they're on that list. And I think that's where companies need to begin their focus as to what is that goal and what do we want to be and what is the image that we want to have internally as well as the business community.
And if you don't do it, like you said, it's going to happen without you.
Yes.
If you don't set the tone of what the culture is going to be, then the culture will manifest in some way, and you may like it or you may not. But if you're not intentional about it, it's still going to happen.
It is going to happen, and it may not happen in the way that you want.
Right. Exactly. So what are the, you get a chance. You mentioned working with companies from $2 million to publicly traded companies. What are the differences that you see that those companies have to make as you grow in size and you get to that uber big level and have thousands of employees? How can you maintain what you started at a smaller, more intimate level?
As you grow, that is more difficult to maintain that. As a small company, personalities matter much more.
Sure.
As you interact. As you get to be a large company, there is that infrastructure and those layers of management that dilute that. Yet there's still a major impact. I mean, recently we've all seen about what was going on at Uber and the change in the CEO being forced out and the change in their culture that's being made necessary. And that's an example right there of the impact of the leader on that culture coming to a point where that no longer works and that culture has to change. And you find that in smaller businesses as well. We have a client that's in the process of sale from the founder to another person in the company. The two individuals couldn't be more different personality-wise and their viewpoint towards employees. And one, the founder sees the employees as an integral part of the team, treat them as people, treat them with respect, make sure they understand that they're appreciated. And then the buyer sees all people as movable pieces on a chessboard and easily replaceable. As a result of that, there's considerable strife going on right now on the handoff of the leadership from the seller to the buyer. And it's not working. And that's why we were brought in to help work that out. and to be able to say to them, you have this culture in this company that's 29 years old. A new owner coming in is upsetting that. The problem that you're going to have with that is it's going to be like the old story of rats leaving the ship, and you're going to be losing employees. You can't afford to do that.
Right.
Right.
You have to change your methodology now, and we're helping them do that.
And that's they're doing it. They're making progress, because I've found that's a very difficult thing when you have that mindset to shift it to this. All of a sudden, maybe we should value these people. Is it working?
At the end of the day, I think that the sale will fall through, and they'll have to rewind back a year and start over.
Yeah. That's I think the tough thing is that it's not enough to just give it lip service. This is something that you have to truly believe in for it to work.
Employees have very active BS detectors.
Yes, they do. Well, and I was just going to say, because you have to have the employees on board with what your mission is, with what your image is, and if the employees don't agree with either management's theory of what the business is or what the image is, you're talking about the rats leaving the ship, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, talk to us about some of the other mistakes that you see companies make when they're trying to shift their culture, create a great place to work. What are some pitfalls that they fall into?
You'll see this more with larger companies. They'll hire outside consultants who'll come in and give them a plan, and then it's force-fed to everyone. There is not the 360 communication with the employees to understand how it's going to be received and how it needs to be presented. So we have a company client that is changing its focus on industry. And they believe they can do it, and they can use their technology that they have and actually serve other needs of some of their client base that they have. But getting the employees to understand that and understand how they fit into that has not been well thought out. And as a result, they're kind of standing there. The joke I use, you're standing there with 1 foot in the boat, 1 foot in the dock, and the boat's drifting away.
Talk about a precarious position.
Yes. Yeah.
That asking employees is so underrated, and it is one of the most valuable things you can do. Is we joke quite a bit about the ping pong table, and everybody wants to be a great place to work, so they just go put a ping pong table in, because that's what all the tech companies did, and they're cool to place to work. And it's like, if your employees don't play ping pong, then it doesn't matter. It's not going to make you a better place to work. And taking the time to seek out what's important to you, what do you want, what does it mean to be a great place to work. When we've done that in the past, I've been blown away at some of the things that people come up with, and it's not the traditional more money, more vacation.
Right.
There's they want to be part of projects that are outside the scope of what they're already working on. It's like, wait, what, you want to do this? This is what you want to work on? That's really cool. Let's create an opportunity for that. So I think that's a huge piece of advice that is so easy and inexpensive to do.
We have a prospect company that they want us to come in and help them analyze their operating infrastructure and how they can get information faster for their management teams, which are dispersed across the country. And they have the foosball tables. They have all of those things and things like that. But what they've done, and this is driven by a new CEO who came in, who'd been with the company a number of years, and then the CEO retired and the new CEO came in. And what he said to everyone was, it seems to me, and knowing you people and having worked with you a number of years, that it's more important to you that you understand the contribution you're making to the client, and that you're working with the latest technology. He says, so we're going to focus our teams on defining what we do for each customer, why the customer wants it, and what's the best technology that we can use for that customer. But keep in mind, we want that stickiness so that customer stays with us. Well, technical people, don't understand what you mean by stickiness. That's a sales term. And so they did a good job of explaining that we want to have a long-term relationship with the client. We want you to have a long-term relationship with the client. And so as a result, the foosball table, the ping pong table, those are all being dusty. They're not being used because everybody's focused on what they contribute and what they're doing. And that's put new life into their development teams because, you know, they look at each other and they say, damn, we're good. And that's because they have belief in what they're doing and why.
And there's momentum that builds on that. When you're accomplishing great things and achieving, you know, that level of awesomeness, as we call it at Footers.
Right.
Yeah.
It's powerful stuff, and some of that, the ping pong tables and the foosball tables become less and less important. Where we've gotten rid of all of ours. We do have the Papa Shot. People still walk by and shoot hoops, but that was totally our team saying, like, we love this. Keep this piece great. And the unique thing is it provides an opportunity to build a little bit of camaraderie and space for relationships to be developed, and for us having these different departments that you've got culinary and you've got office and you've got warehouse and service, and for them to be able to kind of mix in an area and have lunch together and play Papa Shot, it's a really cool thing for that space to exist. But I would agree that more powerful bonds and meaningful feelings about your work are developed when we do that awesome event and we just nail it.
Yeah.
Well, what happens with that, and Anthony, that's a very key thing I think that you have in your culture, because people have built up those personal relationships. If something blows up with an event with a client, all hands on deck jump in.
Yes.
And they don't have to be asked, they just have to be notified that something happened.
Yes.
And to have that kind of a team, the team itself is proud of the fact that they have that relationship and they can support the customer. And that takes a lot of effort to build that.
Yes. And when I know you as a person, I'm going to be a lot more patient with you. We talk about that. Yeah, when those moments, something blows up, something goes wrong, the first question out of your mouth shouldn't be, well, was this right? Or did this happen? Did this person do this?
Or whose fault was it?
It should be, how quick do you need it there? What do we need to do to make it right? And you just fix it and you figure it out later in terms of, it's a huge shift that's an ongoing thing. I appreciate what you're saying because we've tried really hard at Footers to do that, but we definitely have realized too that it's not something that we achieved and we're done. It's something
it's
we
an
have
ongoing
to keep working
process. What I'm hearing of you guys talking about that, you mentioned the ping pong table or the foosball or whatever it is. It seems like that comes up as just an employee's desire to have a way to take that breather or blow off some steam. And Anthony, you wrap that up in what it if you're doing it right, it provides the camaraderie. And that's what we have here is a gym across the street, and we work out together. And you got people from different departments that I wouldn't know otherwise. But when you work out and spot each other, then you learn to spot each other at work.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so that's what it is. It's blowing off some steam, but building the relationships in the process.
Exactly. They're going to find ways to take breaks throughout the workday if we can do it in a way that's together and give them space to do that.
Exactly.
Let's chat a little bit about succession planning and business transitions. You've mentioned a couple of examples of clients you've worked with. Where do you recommend business owners start when they are starting to think about transitioning their business?
One of the first things that we will ask a business owner when they've approached us to help them prepare for sale is to say, have you sat down with a wealth planner to plan the financial part of your retirement? Do you know what number you need to retire in the way that you'd like to retire? And if they have not done that, we recommend that they do that immediately, because if you don't know what you need to retire, any offer that you get for your company, you're unsure because you don't know if that's enough. If you don't know that's the right value for your company. So as a result of that, we ask them to start there. The second question is, what are you going to do when you're no longer running this company?
Yeah.
For so many business owners, their identity is their company. And when you no longer carry that brand, what are you going to do? One of the interesting things, quotes, is that when a business owner tells his spouse, "I'm going to retire," and their response is, "I married you for better or worse, but not for lunch." So figure out where you're going to hang out, and looking at that. And so that leads to the next question: are you and your spouse aligned to what that retirement's going to be? And then we can get into the mechanics of helping them plan to sell their business. But it also needs to be asked when they're looking at succession planning as well. It's those same questions. If somebody's going to replace me, but I'm still going to own the company, okay, is there going to be enough income coming out of there for my retirement, and what am I going to be doing? And the worst thing is that they retire but don't leave, and then interfere.
Get in the way. Get in the way, yeah. That's a great. I have a friend, and he sold his company, and he joked that after 6 months, he'd skied as many days as he could possibly ski, and his daughter came home from school, and he was still in his robe reading the Wall Street Journal. He knew it was time to get back to work. He'd kind of run out of things to do, and so it's an important piece.
We had one situation like that where guys sitting around the house. His wife went out and got a job because she didn't want to have to sit there and look at him all day.
So in thinking about that, what are the elements that have to be part of a successful succession plan?
Say that 3 times
right.
fast, yes. I think that some of the things we talked about already of what am I going to do after I exit? Secondly, why are you exiting? Is it personal? Is the business got to a point where it's beyond your bandwidth and you need other skills to continue to grow it? Why are you looking at succession? And then, have you been grooming anyone for that succession? Or are you going to have to go outside the company and bring in new talent? And secondly, who else are you talking to about this? Do you have peers through some group that you might belong to that you're kind of talking about, well, how are you doing it, or what are you doing? Or do you have an advisors helping you think this through? It's awfully hard to just come up with a succession plan on your own without getting some feedback from someone who's either been there or thinking about it as well, to compare ideas. And so it is that planning function up front, and to be able to say, what are the next steps in my succession plan? And if you have your reason why, and you've developed a timeline, then what are the qualifications that you need for your replacement? And what does that person look like? Are they in the business? Are they in the family, if you're a family-operated business? Or is it going to have to be someone from the outside? And if you're a family-operated business, and yet you need to bring somebody in from the outside, how are they going to interact with the family? These are things for you to think about up front as you try to figure out what your options are for your succession plan.
And those are that can be so overwhelming for people to start thinking about. And what I've seen is they tend to just put it off and put it off and put it off.
Sure.
And they get to a point where they get desperate, into a desperate situation where they have to sell, and they don't have the options that they would like to have. They don't have they're forced into something that isn't an ideal situation. So timeline, I mean, when should you be thinking about this if you're a business owner? Is this something that you should always be factoring in, or is there a kind of, okay, I need to allot 3 to 5 years for this?
A hard and fast timeline I don't think works. I think what happens is you start thinking about in your own mind, what's the next chapter in my life? That's when you start thinking about that. You may be 40 years old rather than 70. And what is the next chapter in your life, and what is your vision of what that might be? And then how does my company play in that role? and looking at that. And if you have a spouse, you should be discussing that with them as well. And so that, I believe, is the key driver. And then from there, that will help you figure out what your timeline is. One of the things that we continually tell people is denial is not a strategy.
Nah.
And in smaller businesses, you find that because the business owner is so wrapped up in their business, they often haven't built those relationships with peers that they can talk about and they can share ideas and pull that out, which there's a number of groups out there that they can belong to, and I recommend those to them all the time because they are of value to them from that standpoint. And so the next step in that succession plan is really determining that. And if you're in good health and you're looking at the next chapter of your life and your company is performing, then you have the time. If your company is not performing and it's losing money and you're afraid that the bank's going to pull the plug on you, that's a survival plan,
Right.
and that's a totally different environment. From that standpoint in the survival, and we've done that. We have last summer we had 3 companies that are in turnaround situation, and 2 of them are turning around. The third one was sold. And all 3 of them had 2 things in common that got them there. And they had had 5 years of a good run, and suddenly they're losing clients. Each one of them, the business owner had gotten beyond their bandwidth and couldn't manage everything, and things were falling on the floor, and they didn't have a strong number 2 in the company. There was nobody to delegate to that they consistently count on. That's poor planning, and it comes back to haunt.
Yeah. So one of the big challenges that I see happen quite a bit is how the impact of a sale or a transition on the employees. And there's a ton of statistics out there of that's a deal killer. And you brought up a perfect example of the culture of 2 organizations. Whoever's acquiring and whoever is being acquired don't always mesh, and getting those in alignment can be very difficult. So what are some strategies that you have with some of your clients in terms of how do you approach this with your employees? You want to sell the business. You don't want to just show up one day and say, guess what? We're done. Business is sold. New owner. But at the same time, you've got to, you can't do it too early, right? Because we've still got to work toward that sale point and driving value.
Personally, I sold a software company that I owned last year. And in knowing that I was going to exit at some point, and 100% of all owners will exit their business. Some of it may be horizontal, but we will all exit. And so in thinking of what are the value of the people,
Right.
and the people in the software industry are the value. So in planning the exit, who were we going to sell to? A financial buyer or a strategic buyer? A strategic buyer is probably going to want the customer list and the intellectual property, but not necessarily the employees. The financial buyer is looking for something that's going to make a fair amount of money, and they need to keep the people in order for that to happen. So I groomed that company over a period of about 5 years that it would become purchased by a financial buyer, and it was. And part of that was giving key employees ownership in the company so that the buyer would have to deal with them, and that was by design. And that's one way you can take care of employees.
That's great. And then they're still invested, and there's some opportunity for them along the way and to continue. And so it's good because you don't want to create a situation where you sell the business and then the new buyer comes in and loses all the employees. That's not ideal. And
Yeah, what we described sounds like a win-win for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You try to do that.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony Lambatos from Footers Catering, for bringing Dave Johnson in for our discussion today. This was a really interesting conversation. Dave Johnson is the managing partner of C Squared Solutions. This just seems to me like incredible for advice for any business owner. You might want to go check out the podcast later or look for it on YouTube on our live stream. Great information. Thank you, Dave, so much.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank
Tim.
you for inviting
Thanks,
me.
Dave.